Hello. Are you there in person, Brandon?
I'm here in person. I think we're still working through figuring out mic setups and stuff like that in the room. So probably be a few minutes.
All right, this is going to be a test to make sure everybody's got their microphones turned off in the room.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to shut the door. It doesn't mean that like, you don't accept more people coming in.
Bear with us on the line. Let's see. Now that goes down from everybody on the Zoom that's not in the room. Give a thumbs up or something that you guys can hear us.
We can hear you.
Hey,
Can you hear us? Hey,
Jesse,
hello,
it's Lockie, by the way.
hello. Yeah, I just see Brandon's face.
Yeah, I'm trying to enter. The Wi-Fi is unfortunately not being cooperative for me. I'm on that one.
Cloud Native, and it's just not working.
The showcase, yeah. Okay. So maybe I'll just, I was going to offer to take minutes, but.
I'm wondering if I
Too close. Gotta mute your mic and mute your speaker. Audio. This is the joys of having to meet.
That sounds like a joke.
Oh, VBats is here. That's who took over. Hey, VBats.
Suck it, nerds.
Hey, Vincent.
Hey, y'all.
Don't have anything on the main screen, so I think what we're going to do is just have a bunch of people sharing our own videos and preferably not sharing speakers or microphones, and that way we're all on one microphone. I think we got a few people who are joining us 30 minutes late. I think John, who wanted to talk about his issue, so I think that's the one everybody else wants to talk about right now. I'm going to find ways to defer for other topics for about.
Well, I literally could not have planned on the schedule working out like it did. I thought I was going to be driving people everywhere, and then it turns out it was like everybody's taken care of and I'm at home, so I just fixed myself a gin and tonic and we're ready to go.
Should we talk about the auth working group? I don't know who has the checkpoint image support. We could also talk about that too if someone here wants to. Okay, no volunteers for that one. On the auth working group, and I'm just stalling here for time at this point, so feel free to jump in at any point. It looks like I've got some people. I need to make some changes for adding more people on the supporter side. And that. But we want to add some more proposed owners, that's the word I was looking for, and stakeholders. Right now it was originally just me, and so I've got a few volunteers in there. Buddy, I think I saw you were in there as well, on some of your stuff. Two others are chiming in saying they were open to adding themselves.
I'm not sure whether he expressed interest or not.
He expressed interest in Zut and for himself as well, so I think someone in there suggested they might have been okay with the Docker Hub side. I don't know if they were.
Oh, you've gone mute.
Can you hear us?
Now you're back.
Okay, I'll just make sure I'm talking louder. What I get for being a quiet person.
Yeah, we want to hear you. Yell from there. I think I heard Docker Hub and then you went mute. I think Jeff Carter volunteered to help out with some of the auth stuff.
That he did, and so I wanted to make sure that he was representing Docker, and so.
Yep.
That's why I wanted to check in with you. So you're good on that, Chris?
Yeah, he's the right person.
All right, that's what I wanted to double check on. So I was like, I don't recognize this name, and I should. I'm supposed to recognize these names.
He wanted to join us today, but he can't make it until a little bit later.
Okay.
So he might pop in later.
Okay. Cool, we've got a few on this. In general, I jumped in halfway through the last time we pushed a working group through. How far do we want to press and wait to get more sponsors and stakeholders to make sure we get a coalition on this thing before we say, let's start doing, get through what we're doing with the refers first and then start another working group? Aren't.
All the calls, where, oh, I have nothing, and then suddenly like an hour later.
Okay. By the silence.
Just
I
to
take
just to
that,
confirm, the microphone, wherever it is in the room, I'm hearing you fine, Brandon, and then whatever just back chatter happened, almost couldn't hear it all. I just heard the laughter.
Sorry, that was Amy being peanut gallery. I'll stop.
Amy's just joking.
It's
back
fine.
on.
Just lean into the microphone, Amy. That's all.
We want to hear the jokes. I guess Brandon, if you need someone from or want someone from ECR, I'd be happy to participate in that working group as well.
More the merrier. I will take
Yep.
all the volunteers we can get.
Looking forward to it.
So in terms of timing for this one, does it sound good that we should probably try to get the 1.1 out first before we start another working group?
The more incentives to releasing 1.1, the better.
Let's get one done.
Okay. I hear consensus on that one, and I feel that consensus myself, because I only juggle so many things at once. All right, so with that, I mean, I'm juggling as best I can here.
Can I just take a minute to just introduce everybody that's in this room that may not be seen? Or is everybody on the call? Can I just introduce? Because I see people putting names in, but
That was me.
just, I think we can only see one camera. I just want to make sure everybody who's on the call knows who's in here. So we have Amy.
Hi.
Can you hear me okay? Yeah, Amy says hi. We have Sam.
Yes.
Sam Karp, Brian Goff, Brandon Mitchell, Cody Mladenov, Lockie Evenson, Sajay Anthony, and John Shell from VMware.
Look them all.
Does everybody have a link to the meeting too? Okay. Thank you for letting me do that.
You warm the room up too.
Please spell your last name, John.
Thank you, because I'm like, I'm just making things
Got you.
weird, like someone.
We got you.
Officially entered on the record and cannot escape.
Nothing gets deleted.
People have tried. I've gone back to the notes and had to revert stuff. People have tried to. Alrighty. So yeah, I think that's all I wanted to talk about on the auth working group. Anybody here for discussing the checkpoint image support stuff? I entered in here.
Sorry, Lucky. I was trying to help with attendees and I totally mashed it up. So thank you.
No, it's all good. I'll stop typing.
I was going to let you continue to do it.
I wonder if that was Adrian that put it on the list. No. To represent that one.
So which one are you talking about?
Checkpoint issue?
Yeah, I put it on the list.
Okay.
I don't want to dive into it, but I did want to kind of get a pulse check on it if I did want to dive into it. Like, what's the general? So we talked about this a few times over the years. There's some interesting use cases. I think sort of to me, what we put in a registry best represented by an image manifest. There are ways to do this without much change. So I want to just kind of get a pulse check and see what people think about this about this issue, and if there's much to talk about or not.
Personal take is I don't have enough experience with it to be able to give it the thumbs up, thumbs down to know if it's being done the right way. I was deferring and trying to get more people that might be more familiar with it. It may just be the case where there's only a single implementation out.
Brandon, are you on the room mic? Like, is everybody on the same mic? Because your audio, when you talk, your audio keeps clipping out.
Flipping? Okay. I'll try to speak louder. Yeah, the concern I had was that when I look at what's going on with that side, I don't have enough background on there, so I was hoping to find other projects that are doing it that can like give some kind of check and balance to it to say, hey, it's not just a single project pushing their own single spec onto the repo, but this is like a collaboration between multiple projects.
That makes total sense. And if that's, I guess if that's one of the hesitations to sort of bring more clarity to it, I think I might have a project that I can bring. There might be another one that I'm aware of that I might invite to discussion. So that might bring at least another one. I just kind of wanted to get a sense of the room too. Is anybody opposed to this? The idea of like, wait, what happened? Oh, Josh is here. That's
Josh
what's up.
joined.
The beautiful
Josh
Delansky just
I was
joined
like,
us.
what
I'm sorry.
changed? What changed? It's Josh. Hi, Josh.
Is there a
So-
room or no?
And there's a room in Seattle.
But Josh is not in it.
I'm not there, yeah.
Yeah, I mostly just wanted to get a read from the room if like this is something verboten or if it's going to be sort of like this rat hole that's not going to result in anything good. That's basically what I was trying to get a read from. I'm not hearing one way or the other, so we might just work it in the issue, and there might not be much to discuss here. I kind of expected VBATS to tell me this was all a bad idea and why I should just drop it, but he's not saying anything. So.
This is the checkpoint 962 issue.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't have any backstory. I was just scrolling through it as you were talking, but
yeah,
I see some build commands and some blob layouts. Holy moly!
Yeah,
no.
Yeah. I think there's some work to be done here to sort of abstract and generalize some of it. But I think it could be. I think it could be a useful thing. And I remember Cryu being a thing a while back, and then it kind of people stopped talking about it. I think that there is some value for whatever is running in a container runtime environment to, any static representation of that being something that we at least nod to in a spec. I don't love the idea of something becoming a de facto standard that rides sidecar, which is kind of the one thing, because I know of a project that is already doing that, and then this one seems to be doing that, but at least it's looking for some support from the OCI. So if nobody side eyes or frowns at me, we might just kind of discuss it in the issue, and that would be fine for me to put a pin in and move on.
The thing that got my attention was trying to understand where the repository boundary falls in here. One of the concepts they threw out was that your image might be in one remote repository and you're pushing this checkpoint to a local repository that you have write access to. It feels almost like you're splitting the logic of you're running something that's sourced in two different places.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, that was my only comment. Now that I'm just catching myself up to speed, I'm sorry, I'm slow. Yeah, absolutely, because I might run, say, an Ubuntu image, but it's not, if I did have any kind of checkpoint data, it's obviously not going to be at all associated with the Docker Hub Ubuntu image that it's running. Like, I don't have push writes, the ACLs are completely separate. And furthermore, if you are doing some kind of, okay, so whether you're doing live migration and you're accepting the risk of that, I expect that the snapshot data you'd want to be wildly proximate to the cluster or pod or node that's doing that checkpoint. So you would not push it back across the wire. So you would be pushing it to a local registry saying it references this digest of a remote image. Like, absolutely, this is going to be a split-brained use case. Or if it's not like a live migration, say you're like in some kind of security honeypot checkpoint, like freeze the image, get a snapshot of it so we can look through it, then you would again push it to some local registry, not even
It would
public,
still be split
completely
brain.
different ACL. Like it would absolutely have to be split brained. So I don't see a real use. I mean, like that's absolutely. I feel like a core tenet of this thing is that it would refers API or whatever. Like it would have to say, here's this thing that refers to this other digest exactly, like that exact runtime. This other image. I mean, so, but otherwise, I don't see anything wrong with that image. This use case, I think it's exactly a logical extension of like a robust feature set.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with you. I think it's about codifying something as a portable data format more than, and how would we deal with it in a registry, right? I don't see this coming into distribution. This is more about an extension of a descriptor. You know, and again, so we don't have the sort of diaspora of like, you know, we're all working from a specified image format, but once it's running, all bets are off. And if we want to checkpoint it, oh well, like I don't love that. So yeah.
Make sense to keep it as a split brain, or would it make sense to say, we're running the remote Ubuntu image, here's the digest for that remote Ubuntu image, for that manifest, and when we push our checkpoint, we push not only our checkpoint, but the manifest and all the blobs and everything for that Ubuntu image. That way it's fully reproducible from that one repository.
So it would be possible to do that. I mean, I don't think it would be that's not the core use case I have in mind, at least. But I don't see anything wrong with that. I mean, I guess that's where referrers gets in, right? Like if you have an image, you push it in a repo, and then you can push a checkpoint to it as a reference to it, and that's kind of your use case. That would be okay. I don't see anything wrong with that.
It's artifact that points back to an image and reverse.
Yeah. It'd be an interesting development tool too, but now we're talking about use cases probably too much, but yeah. We still have 6 minutes to go. So we're doing.
We're doing a little song and dance to see if we can get John on here before we jump into the good conversation.
Okay, well, this was enough of a mediocre conversation to get me at least to know my motivation is not misdirected. So
All right.
love y'all.
Yeah, it's all good, Jesse.
How does it feel to be the pre-show, Jesse? You're just a warm-up act.
Don't worry, just the way you eloquently phrased that was tickled my humor.
Yeah, I'm used to being a warm-up act. I was almost signed. The biggest stages I ever played on were before bigger bands. You know, that's me. That's my jam. But thank you all for humoring me, at least.
All right, have we run out? We want to like start tackling the big issue? Are there any other side issues we want to delay with? Like everybody just wants to talk about one thing at this point. Does it make sense to go around and start with kind of people to give like, cap it at no more than 5 minutes, just saying this is what you want to get out of it, and this is where you're starting from? That way, you're not assuming that any one person has any one view. Go quick around the room and around the call.
That'll take a lot of time, but.
Well, I'm saying cap it at 5 minutes. So if you can do it in less than 5 minutes, that's even better. So I'm looking towards Sam because I was just going to start on the right side of the room and just go around. Okay.
Not enough volume to trigger the mic.
Louder.
Louder.
Louder. Yeah.
I see that there's a bunch of disagreement on GitHub, and I want to all is coming a place for.
Sorry, it's clipping.
So Sam, I will be interpreter. Sam said, and and I paraphrase here, is that there seems to be a lot of disagreement on the GitHub thread, and Sam's hoping that he can help facilitate everybody coming to an agreement or less disagreement, as it were. So that's Sam's purpose of being here.
Brian?
Do that, okay?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm just looking for a path forward.
Brian said he's looking for a path forward, one way or another. I don't know if they may have heard that. I don't know what decibels it clips off.
All right, this is where I'm going to use my 5 minutes, but I'll try to be as brief as possible. I feel like we've got 3 different parties. We've got the producers of artifacts. We've got the storage, distribution, transport of artifacts. And we've got the consumption of artifacts. And I see the value of using artifact manifest. I'll say it right here so there's no confusion. There is value to that. I think there is a good end goal that we can get to. But the path to getting to that end goal, I want to make sure that we don't ambush the people that are on the distribution and consumption and downstream tooling by producing them too soon. I want to make sure that when we produce them, that the people downstream have had time to upgrade their stuff so that they can be ready for it and it doesn't cause any breaking issues. Okay, less than 5 minutes. Go for it.
I actually agree with you, and it's Brian, I would like to understand what is the path forward to achieve what.
Myself, Lockie here, very similar to Brandon and Toddy. I think the issue that I think we're coalescing around is for providers or distribution providers and end users, and how we roll out changes like this without causing a lot of grief in the tooling or confusion in the tooling. And I think that would be where I'd want to focus the time, is how do we acknowledge that if we think that that's something we do, and work towards figuring that out. Because I think that is going to be a root problem that we're going to have to deal with time and time again through these working groups, is how do we want to make a set of rules for rolling these things out, or a set of concerns or guidelines. Don't know the answer, don't want a solution here right now, but just I think there is a path forward. How do we figure that out? Because this is going to help the next things, whether it's checkpoints or anything else that comes in the pass it to Sajay. Can you hear Sajay? I can interpret.
Lucky will interpret.
Are we doing the translator?
Yeah,
We'll
sorry,
get there.
I can, do you want to say everything and then I can cut? I was a translator in Japan, so I'm familiar with translating, but
Yeah, no, I can make
English
sure.
to English is a new skill for me.
Nike for sure.
Do you want to, just come sit here.
Yeah, okay.
I'm bringing Sajay closer to the mic.
Yeah, so, is this clear, Vincent, or? Oh, you're good, all right. So, I want to kind of like, first of all, highlight what Sam said, which is, I want to get OCI in a place where we can agree on the issue and on a path forward. But I want to acknowledge that there's a lot of ask from different parties, for the goodness of where Artifact Manifest is showing the direction. But I want to be cautious as well. So that's where we're all kind of in agreement that shows the way forward, but it also kind of like should be cautious in how we adopt it and not break clients and whatnot. So getting the verbiage correct, part of how Artifact should be adopted would be one. Might ease this conversation as well, where I stand as well.
Come over to the microphone as well. So I'm new to this group from VMware, and I'm mostly looking to be a consumer of all 3 of those pieces: producer of artifacts, distributor, and but I need to learn a lot, so mostly I'm here to do that.
Okay. Well, welcome, John. We're glad you're here.
Appreciate it.
Hey, folks on the phone, I can go by the order that I see it in.
I'm E. I'm from VCR. AWS ECR, and I'm coming to looking for a forward compatible solution to get alignment so we can provide a solution as a registry. So mainly coming here to learning and looking for a finalized solution. Yeah.
Shannon? Shannon?
I couldn't possibly comment.
That's the
I'll
best
defer
way
to Chris.
Chris,
Yeah.
let's turn to you.
Yeah, so I think Milosh voiced our position pretty clearly I think it's towards the bottom now, where basically a lot of the technical arguments ring true. This is kind of more philosophical about what we want the OCI to be and what we want to be able to store in registries going forwards. So I would echo his call there of it's time to seriously start talking about V2 as well, because I think we've come into lots of conversations where we're rubbing against the edge of V1. My personal favorite is the digest uncompressed blobs thing that I keep running around and telling people about. So like there's multiple places where we've run into issues with V1. And so I think we've learned a lot. We should start thinking, 3 to 5 years, how do we do V2? But given where we are and what's on the other side of this, we're supportive of having artifact manifests.
Jesse?
I think I'm pretty well aligned with Sam at this point. I've seen both sides. I've argued both sides. There's definitely, I'm definitely on the distribution side, which means that I just want things to work stably and for things to be portable. So I think that my view is a bit more on the conservative side of things. But that said, I agree that we should be looking at 2.0, at least planning for it. I also think this is the first minor version. I think a lot of the heartburn that I heard coming out of 999 was really about like abandoning work that was done and making a massive sea change in something. I don't know that we put enough effort into thinking about, well, what if we deferred artifact to 1.2, right? I don't think that sends a horrible message. I think that it honors the work. Right now, I think I'm okay either way. And I know that's not super useful, but maybe I can be part of the lubricant that makes people be okay one way or the other. Effectively, for me, the big ticket item here is the refers API, and I really don't want to block it too long if we can't come to a consensus around artifacts. That doesn't mean I want to abandon artifacts. And I'll just remind everybody, back in image pre 1.0, I argued for artifacts. So I do like the idea logically and for tooling and simplicity, but I think right now I'm more interested in getting refers in front of users than I am, and the refers API and reference types, than I am blocking too much longer on a new media type.
Michael?
I agree with what Jesse said. I don't think I have a lot to add there. Happy with either of them. Looking for the refers API more than anything, and if moving artifact out of this release speeds that process up, I'm okay with that.
Ram Kumar?
I agree with whatever you guys have said. Just a reminder that nothing that is coming out of this working group has a forcing function. So the registries will do what they have to do. And it is probably the user adoption that is going to drive this more than anything else. If users are asking for this, then yes, then people will move faster. Otherwise, no. So there is no forcing function here. So I don't know about putting this out there and giving people time to implement this and things like that. Yes, that is very ideal to do. But at the same time, just reminding folks that there is no forcing function in coming out of this working group. That's it. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh man. I will honestly say that I am entirely split-brained on this particular topic. I fully understand the wish and desire to say all these clients work, we've all been abusing this format. Why can't we just call this legacy manifest and continue abusing it as a method? But I also feel like we can work towards an ideal and be better and allow that clean break for clients that are doing traditional behavior versus what everybody that's voiced so far is excited about what we could achieve. So on the one hand, I feel like there's some technical thing that, some technical point we could arrive on that could actually move us forward that isn't just ripping something out, while acknowledging the gaps that, like, John is clearly feeling the pains of, that he's willing to start the conversation to rip it out. Because yeah. Chris, I hadn't even considered some of those other pains, like dealing with freaking compressed objects and digests. Like, I think that rock in my shoe has gotten so familiar that, like, yeah, if we could just go back and fix that since the beginning, that would be great. Thanks. I almost feel like what would be more constructive is, like, if we just can almost outline what the gaps are, or like where the breakages are, and see that, like, existing legacy clients or otherwise that are just pulling and pushing existing manifests, like all the ones from Docker and all the OCI ones that they've already been kind of dealing with, and that this is just one that, like, new use cases might break on, then it's like, that's understandable. And at least the biggest thing would be clarity for the implementers. And otherwise, like, if users get weird errors and they search, what are they going to find? But, like, work towards an ideal rather than maintain a legacy workaround. Really. So I feel like the way forward is not ripping it out, but rather being crisp about how any of those gaps would be worked towards, so that we can have this kind of, like, ideal, because it's clearly rallied something among several different communities, and even, like I said in the issue, like, community projects that I had no idea about that were already implementing this to do something cloud native Kubernetes, component related. So I think it's more than just ripping it out before a 1.1 at this point.
Josh, did you get any inspiration from some guru in Costa Rica or wherever it was?
Yeah, Brandon, thanks for your help with that. Yeah, I don't know. I am just absolutely depressed at OCI's lack of ability to ship anything. So that's my honest take on it, and I don't feel really strongly either way about this. I think that I can share, like, as an anecdote, that many years ago, with, like, Steve Lasker and others trying to, like, do Helm with OCI, and I think just several months ago, Docker Hub allowed Helm into it in that format. So if you're looking at, like, a timeline of things, I just, I think codifying the new artifact codifying the way that Helm, an original OCI artifact, do as an artifact is one of the super positive things about this. I just started looking at cosign using OCI 1.1 stuff, and that was one of the big hurdles, is pushing that out as into the referrals, and that alone is like a big change. So I don't have much else to say. I hope we can do a 1.1. I was hoping we could do a 1.1 by this week, and it's like now it's not happening. So I rest.
Y'all still want to get there soon. Victor? Victor, if you're speaking, you're still on mute.
I'm not sure if it's for me. I'm just here to to listen.
Okay. And last but not least, John.
Sorry, I missed probably some very important discussion, and so I feel bad about even saying anything. Brandon, can you briefly summarize? Were there points that were made in this talk that weren't already made on that thread that would be useful for me to respond to, or would it be useful for me to summarize my position? What would people like me to do right now? Because I've kind of come in late and thrown everything off.
I would say just do a quick summary of your position, where you want to see us go with this.
Sure. So by my understanding of Artifact Manifest, we're not solving a new problem, really. It's actually, the point of Artifact Manifest is to be a breaking change, right? We want to break all existing registries and clients and force them to change so that we have a new universe where, you know, we're in control of our fate. That seems not good from my perspective, because, you know, I have a lot of hats. As a registry operator, yeah, it is pretty straightforward to add support for Artifact Manifest and other things. As a client author, yes, it is pretty straightforward to add support for Artifact Manifest. As a participant in like the broader software community, I think this is a misstep, because it isn't as simple as upgrading both ends of the pipe, because you don't know what's in the middle of the pipe, right? So there are a lot of like proxies and processes that are operating on image manifests and image indexes that currently work, you know, registry proxies galore, security policies and such that are looking at parsing and doing things with the adjacent structures that we already have. They work today. A lot of artifacts and communities have been built on top of that, and it works today. If we intentionally make this breaking change, you know, it's straightforward to upgrade both ends, but I don't know that everyone is considering how disruptive that is for complex systems that have been made with assumptions about what's in a registry and what clients will do. I don't think it is worth the churn in the ecosystem for what feel to me like mostly philosophical points and aesthetic choices about the on-disk format of a JSON blob, right? There, as far as I can tell, it's an equivalent, semantically equivalent data structure. It's just different to break stuff. And I think that's a huge mistake. It took 5 years to get like Quay to support Schema 2, even though Schema 1 was specifically like a transitionary format. Still dealing with that in some ways. I think it's a mistake. I think it's against the values that OCI has around backwards compatibility. Yeah, that's my position. Did I miss anything?
We we did a lot of song and dancing, so we didn't spend too much time on this before we got you here. Just ran out of pre-show agenda items. I think if I summarized what was going on in the room beforehand, it would be a mix of some people saying, hey, we're just here to listen. Some people saying we want to just find some collaborative middle ground here. Some saying we want to defer this decision until later and we just want to get the refers out as it is, even if that means we need to push this off. I don't think I heard many people, maybe with the exception of yourself, John, that said, don't want this ever. Did I miss anybody saying never artifact? Maybe with your one exception, John, there.
A minor point is that I don't think we shouldn't have new artifact formats. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with introducing a new thing that breaks existing registries and clients. I think it's not worth doing just for the breaking change. Like there's no value to be added, in my opinion, by just introducing a breaking change to break things. If the artifact manifest had tangible benefits for end users, I would probably argue, hey, can we add this to image manifest so that like we don't have to break everything? But if that were impossible, or we argued for long enough, I'd probably yield the point. It's like, okay, yes, like this isn't semantically equivalent to what we have today, so let's make the breaking change and get a new, more powerful thing. That's great. Say if artifact manifest could reference manifests and not just blobs, that's something that's interesting to me. Like composite data structures would be cool. But right now it's just image manifest with one of the fields is renamed. We added artifact type and config blob goes away. And there's a what is it, like a bijection function that they're the same. They're the same thing. It's just a breaking change for no reason, I think. Sorry, I don't mean to offend anyone. I say this over and over again. I think it's a breaking change with no benefit.
The premise that you missed that I started with was that it would make a lot of sense if the producers of the artifacts were deferring their production of the artifacts until such a time that we can get everything in the middle, all the tooling in the middle, the registries, the downstream consumers upgrade on their side and figure out a way we can give that time. That was the one that I threw out. Are there people that say, no, we don't want to wait, we need to have these artifacts on day one? Loaded question. I do that intentionally, right?
Can I ask a clarifying function there, Brandon? What's the difference between putting something into a 1.1 spec with this sort of, but don't use it yet or don't expect it to work, versus deferring to a 1.2 that we take time to work on? Like, what would be the difference there?
My concern if we say 1.1 ships without this, but we want to add it in 1.2, that we still have the same problem we've got today with how do we turn something on new in 1.2. It's when we turn something on, we're turning it on for both sides. And so we need to find a way we can turn this on without inflow of all this stuff on day one is the challenge that I'm facing.
Okay, I won't rat hole on this. I just wanted to clarify it. I'm still not seeing it, and I think to Ramkumar's point when he spoke, I feel like none of this is binding. Like if we ship a thing, it's not like you have to implement it. So I sort of feel like the reason I'm bringing this up is I feel like artifact is the contentious thing, refers is not. And so I don't want to bind refers up behind artifacts if it's contentious and it needs more work and refers is just ready to go. That's kind of the tack I'm taking, and like that's the reason for that question. I'm not just challenging you. I kind of want to clarify it for people in the room to discuss it like in that context.
I think another way of phrasing some of my thoughts is that we've got different views from OCI is just a spec, and so we define a spec and then people can follow or not follow it, versus OCI being a consortium or a collaboration of a lot of different projects and groups and people that are pushing this stuff out. They're trying to make sure their stuff interoperates. Depending on whether we see ourselves as just a spec or as a consortium of different groups that have interoperable concerns, we come out with different conclusions. If we are a consortium, we can interoperate.
Yeah, I'm not going to conflate those two things just yet, because that's happened a few times where an issue arises and it almost tries to figure out whether or not it's a technical issue or whatever. I think that that part of that could be conflated. I think the breaking, John, to your question, your concern, and that's, I don't know when you joined, but that's pretty much what I was saying. Like, I can totally get I think, oh geez, I'm sorry, I'm rambling. Josh, you had your hand raised.
Oh, it's not a big deal.
It is a big deal. You got cute ears.
No, it's not. So if we're all on the same page about refers, I just want to check, does that mean we're all on the same page about the artifact type field? Because that to me feels like artifacts, but in fact, that is the hatch, I think, by which we can do artifacts without artifact manifest. And while we're all here, is there any issue with that new field?
No issue for me. I don't see anybody fretting on that one, so that's basically saying the way we've defined using the image spec to ship an artifact and the way we've defined returning that refers API response, that all stays the same as what we recommended. So to dig on my point about whether we're consortium or spec, the reason I was going down that path was, can we get the different people, the different members of the consortium to say, find this thing, but we're not going to use it yet. Find it, we're going to spend the effort to implement this in our registry servers, we're going to spend the effort to make sure that we can consume it, but we're not going to actually produce it. And I feel like if you define a spec, they say how people use the spec. But if you define a group of people that are trying to collaborate with each other and are trying to agree upon how we're doing stuff, when we get to a point where we can actually say, let's deploy this thing and roll this out and manage our rollout together of how we're going to deploy this change, the way that we're not going to break each other.
What I'm struggling with, because that's allowable, and I've heard a lot of people who are interested in using it. The way that I look at that, and I'm trying to understand what is that content except container images that is created with the image manifest that will take. One way we can go is to say, look, each images will continue to be.
So there are a lot of tools downstream that can work with content without knowing anything about what that content is. Copy images from one registry to another, and whether it is an image or whether it's a Helm chart, you don't care, you're just copying a manifest in blobs. There are tools that do signing. They don't care what it is they're signing, they just get the manifest digest and they sign it. Once we start to ship it with a different manifest type, registry servers can no longer parse it. The tools that are operating on those data structures can no longer pull it and read it because they don't know to send the accept header. They don't know to even request it and what they're looking at. And so there's a lot of tooling that is separate from the specifically defined artifact creators on both ends, or operate with it in the middle, that if they come across this, they're going to break if we go too.
Yeah, but I understand that. But you said that implement expect that if we put spec, right? One of the proposals that you had in the, okay, this is experimental.
Ty, I'm sorry, can you speak up a little bit? Your audio is going out again.
Yeah, so my point is, like, if it is easy to implement this fallback, right, and if we put it behind an experimental feature for some amount of time, there should be reasonable expectations that this tooling will get this implementation done, right? And if fallback is easy to implement, then I would say the problem we're having right now is because it's not in the spec, tools do not implement it. It's in the spec, and we say, okay, you have like 6 months or 12 months to implement. So then, first we'll expect breaking changes. That solves this problem. Because I can see this coming, and I'm thinking about the authorization spec or authentication spec. I see this actually breaking there. So we'll have the same conversation when we actually start defining how authentication will happen with registries. Because currently it's a wild west with how the registries authenticate. So if we don't create a precedent how we can solve those things, the exercise that we are going through right now.
I think that sounds great to me, especially that we're even having that conversation. Because so far, we've never had this challenge before saying, here's a new spec, how do we roll it out? And so if you're saying, figure out how to define that, that's where I want to get to. So that's a good place to be.
I'll give you a little like this. Here's a new spec. Here, how do we adopt it? Because that was what's burned so many people out as we approached 1.0. And it took years for it to be adopted. So it's not a new rodeo. Thankfully, we just have a lot of new faces here. And I think it's kind of the natural square wheel aspect of this of like, hey, we're actually trying to achieve something new here and enable more people. So how do we do this again?
In terms of rolling something out, since I wasn't here for the transition from the Docker to the OCI media types, well, I can say I was because it's still happening. But, you know, back in the day when that was originally rolled out, I wasn't there to hear the discussion of, okay, we just introduced this new media type, but everybody don't jump on it right away because it's going to take a while for registries to be updated and all that stuff. What makes sense for us in terms of how do we define that? Is it just saying, look, we're going to create a 1.1 release, whenever that is, give it 12 months before we say consumers should be creating this stuff, and that gives the community that longer. Can we say something like that with a number defined? Can we pick a number? Are we on that range, or is there some other way we need to be making that kind of decision? Or am I going down the wrong path?
When extensions were done, we actually suggested it as a feature where people can, I think it's okay to specify artifact manifest is laid out.
Sorry, Sanjay, get closer again.
Yeah, so, sorry.
Take it over, translator.
I have a very loud voice. Vincent and everybody else, Sanjay just said, you know, we have this precedent for when we introduced extensions and distribution, which was we added it as an experimental flag, said, you know, give folks time, you know, it sat in there for a while, and the community had time to implement that before it was removed from experimental. Because it's like the observation I've had is, here's a set of ideas. OCI goes, well, show us some implementation and some usage. So in we went and did that in auras, got some momentum in auras, and everyone said, well, you probably should be doing that in OCI. So we go back to OCI, they said, well, here's the working group. Then we go do the working group. Here's the output of the working group. And then, you know, what are we going to do with that? Because I think, you know, kicking this outer release, it's chicken and egg. It's go prove that this is valid. Okay, we've got some users, some people are starting to say this is valid. There's general interest. I'd say there's a coalition of interest out there. They're all saying, we will implement this once it's part of the spec. And what OCI is saying, well, we're not going to make it till part of the spec until everybody implements it. And so it's the chicken and egg, like how do we beat that? So, and the next thing will come along, ORF and anything else that has to go through, and it's this chicken and egg of show me the implementations, show us the usage, because only then will you actually be able to rationalize, because we've got work on artifacts through auras and those data structures being stored. And I think for me, artifacts, the value is that it's not tightly scoped. People are stuffing stuff in image today and abusing it, stuffing all their stuff in images. It's very constricted and tight. Artifacts is kind of the opposite, where it's wide open and you've got a choice as to where you want to store stuff. And I think for me, it's not having blobs be optional is a big part of the usage. But, you know, that's just my perspective. I think that nobody's going to implement it until it's the spec, and the spec's not going to say it's GA until everybody's implemented it. So how do you break that deadlock?
Yeah. Jesse, I wasn't looking when I raised my hand. Did you beat me?
I think so, but you can go first.
So to respond to that a little bit, I think Aura's definitely led the way for us to look at for a lot of this stuff. You've gone through the effort of making your own artifact. You worked on a lot of these APIs, and so that was an experiment, proved a lot of stuff. I feel like part of the challenge that's different on this one is that adding a new API to a registry is something that you can just kind of flip on and off, and we did come up with a backup strategy of how you can use the tag to fall back. It was one of those cases where it just was transparent whether you're on a 1.0 or 1.1 registry to end users. They didn't see that unless they're looking at the tag listing. Once we flip the switch on the new manifest type, that's one of those things that's not transparent to the end users. They start hitting that with their tooling, or if they push it to the wrong registry. It was one of those places we couldn't experiment with, and so it's one of those things that we needed some kind of different method to get that rollout strategy that we didn't have to do for a new API. But there was absolutely value of having you lead the way on a lot of this stuff. So
Well, yeah, no, not looking for credit. It's just that what's the motion? How do we do this? And how do we move things forward and create that value? And I would just in rebuttal to what you said, the community are very creative, and they've already worked around. There's balkanization across registries today that's almost transparent because the tooling is so clever. You can store this media type in this registry. That field gets rejected from this. This registry isn't actually conformant to the spec. Right, so have some faith in our open source to be very, and the other thing is on that, like the proxies in the middle, field additions to APIs, can't say with all certainty that they're not cracking open that thing in the proxy, looking at the fields and then making some decision on field. Field additions are not backwards compatible.
if they crack it open, though, they're modifying the digest. I feel like we're not seeing a lot of that anywhere.
Yeah, it's not transparent.
All right, Jesse, go ahead.
I'm gonna be conscious of the amount of time I speak. I'm gonna probably repeat myself for some folks, but I think it's important to just voice again that sometimes I think when we're talking about the specification, we're really talking about like design of tooling, or you know, sort of how people will build software and release it and support it for their users. Now, this is meant to be a specification, and I know it's a very loose specification, right? I've done the graybeard rant before, coming from specifications of the 80s up through RFCs to now what passes for a spec, right? But the idea here is that this thing represents kind of a line protocol and expectations for an implementation. It doesn't mandate how you build, right? And I think part of what we get caught up on is like, what happens when a customer user does this with the software? It's like, that's not really the job of the spec. I like the idea of having guidance, especially around this being the first minor version with new features. But back to Vincent's point, I was there for runtime. I mean, runtime, how long did we work on runtime for? Like, it was forever, because, and that was a working implementation that we all knew we were using, right? So what we want to do is make sure that we don't spin out on semantics or like the fact that we're using different terminology. To me, I think the specification needs to indicate a set of functionality and how it must be implemented and how it can be implemented, what it can and can't do. And then, you know, if Josh has some software and I have a registry and we want to have them work together, we make them work together. And if they're not going to work with other things, then we can document that, right? If Josh wants to build a piece of software that only talks capital A artifacts, then his users have to know that they can't then pull that artifact after they created it and push it in a 1.0 version of a registry somewhere. That's just going to break, and people need to know that. It's not necessarily the job of the specification to prevent that. And I think that we continue to spin out on that. One other clarification thing, just because I feel like I say things and then they take on a life of their own. I wasn't suggesting we push off capital A artifact to 1.2 or a future thing arbitrarily. It feels like it's contentious and refers isn't. So the whole point is to unstick refers. That's all I meant. I don't mean that it will then solve tooling or migration problems or will solve our legacy problem, because it won't. We actually have to solve that by admitting we can't solve that, right? We can define and specify how this line protocol works. And then people will build software and then they will write documentation and they'll support their customers. So it might be oversimplifying, but I think if we try to get much more complicated, we're going to be here for a year and we don't want to do that. So that's sort of just some, I would like to spend some time in that context for a little bit. Because I feel like I say that and then it kind of goes in a different direction, and I'm now willing to mute and shut up for the rest of the evening and just have a cocktail and listen to you. But I just wanted to really be clear, for the purpose of facilitating the conversation, I want to make sure we're not getting caught up in like treating the specification as a design doc for software. Stephen Day is here. Hello, Stephen. I haven't seen him in like 5 years.
How y'all doing? There's a bunch of people with their hands up. So so Jay pinged me on the Slack. I don't know if I can help here. I looked through the history of the discussion. So let me read through it. Y'all say what you're gonna say.
Yeah, just buckle up, buddy. Just
yeah.
Steven, basically everyone's mad at me, and I'm sorry.
That's okay. It's not
Scott Pilgrim or Jason Johnson versus the world. It's fine.
Okay, let me read up. Y'all say what you're gonna say, and maybe I can help. I don't know. Maybe I'll make it worse.
Thanks, Steven. I've had my hand up for I think the longest, but I liked all the things that Jesse said, and so I saw hands shoot up, and I'd rather do a depth first thing and pop back up if Michael or VBATS wanted to respond to that.
Well, conveniently, my audio completely crashed in the middle of Jesse's talk. So I had a thought, and then I missed all of what Jesse said. So I'll actually yield until I recollect. I forgot my hand was still up.
I was just going to say, you know, like, is there any support for an experimental tag or something saying we're going to introduce artifacts the way it is? We're going to say it's experimental. People can use it if they want, people cannot. But we have a thing that we're pretty sure, like, I don't think anyone disagrees that if we did do artifacts, this is how we would do it, right? Like, I don't think there's a lot of disagreement in that. It's just concern that if we introduce this new thing, things that were built to the old thing aren't going to be able to use it, which is true when you introduce new things, like almost always. And I think if we want to make progress, we have to kind of be okay with that. But I think that what Brandon's been saying, maybe what John's saying, is like, for things like artifacts that are referencing other things, we have this fallback method. It's going to work a lot better if everyone just uses image manifests for the time being. Like, that's super useful guidance that we can publish. But I don't know, ripping it all out feels as though like we're saying that's not the direction we want to move in. But I think that is the direction we want to move in. It's just maybe not the speed we want to move towards it at.
Yeah, so that okay, thank you for that, Michael. Because even now, it's started to put together some of even Jesse's frustration and some of the calls that I was able to attend or listen to over the last couple of weeks of like, were wildly reminiscent to, unfortunately, things that we've talked about for years and either eventually got so frustrated we just moved on from or otherwise. Was like, at some point, you know, in the Docker API that we had this /v2, and it actually returned something. It was just an empty body, and we'd even discussed like, what if we put something like a JSON body in there, so we could show the capabilities or more about the version information or something, rather than just an endpoint that it refers, you know, that it responds to, that you can say, cool, it at least is this v2 API or whatever, you know, v2 ping. But how could we make some kind of a version endpoint that granted, like you, the first part of what I heard you say, Jesse, is like a spec. It's saying, if you wanted to implement a version endpoint to say, hey, this is what we've implemented so far, you know, either this version of the spec, or if we ever got to the point of saying like, you know, feature set flag capabilities, what the hell ever, here's how you could implement it, and others could sniff it out, fully realizing that there will be registries that exist forever because they're running some ancient image that never implement that endpoint. And you could know, because it doesn't have that endpoint, that it doesn't have those capabilities, or you could assume it doesn't have those capabilities. But I'm just saying, like, that does seem like one of those transitionary things, regardless of this whole discussion, that is needed and useful, and we've talked about having, it would be helpful if we put something like that in place and just said, this is one of the transitionary things of like, here's this additional thing that, you know, you're not going to have a bad time. You're not just going to be, as a client or registry or otherwise, having a case, you know, a case statement of errors to handle. But like, I sniffed out and here's some capabilities or some versions that would be helpful for everybody. Great. But I mean, it's like tangential, and also like, to me, that's one of those transitionary steps that's like, yes, are we working towards an ideal? Yes. Is this one of those things that would make it more ideal? Yes. You know, would it help this conversation? Yes. Is it fast in specification terms? Probably. But do we need it? Also, yes. So would it help this whole conversation? I think so. Because if we had some of those things in place, and it's like the concerns of like, is this a breaking change? Is there any way that clients could possibly have detected this breaking change? We should have already had that in place.
John, go for it.
Do you mind if I unwind this stack and respond to VBATs, then Michael Brown, then Jesse, and then Lachlan? Okay.
Buffer overflow. I'm sorry, I can't do it.
I have about 4 concerns that are intertwined, and it is hard to disentangle them because they actually combine to be the problem, and it is not each individual thing separately could be solved. To VBAT's point about, you know, this detecting this breaking change and doing the right thing in the face of old software, it is impossible because the artifact manifest is entwined within the DAG, and we want artifacts to compose. If you generate an SBOM that is in the format of artifact manifest, and then you sign that SBOM with a signature that is in the format of an artifact manifest, it's not portable to an 1.0 registry because you can't push the artifact manifest to a 1.0 registry and reference it from a signature. The signature bytes are determined by the bytes of the manifest that it references. And so you can't actually do this in a backward compatible way without bending over backwards and like introducing new semantics into DAG traversals and stuff. It's certainly possible. I don't like it. The reason I don't like it, popping off of Vincent, Michael. So I agree with you that the consequence of introducing new functionality into software that you want to take advantage of means that you have to upgrade your software in order to use it. I propose that this introduces no new functionality. Artifact manifest as a feature is just a breaking change. It does not change the semantics of the JSON document in any way that's appreciable to end users. Yes, the on-disk layout of this JSON blob is aesthetically more pleasing than the image spec. Is that worth throwing out compatibility with all the existing software that works today? I say no, but I've read in the thread several people who think making that breaking change is actually a good thing, and we really want to do it. Popping out to Jesse. Yes. So I think the non-contentious points of distribution spec are worth releasing. Distribution spec is separate from image spec. We could actually define all of the referrer stuff in terms of duck typing on JSON documents and not in terms of specific media types. For example, we could define distribution specs such that if a JSON document contains the subject field that contains a descriptor, that descriptor, blah, 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 right? So we could easily define distribution spec in ways that don't actually depend on image spec changes. And I think that's worth doing. I think that's easier than arguing this forever. Unfortunately, I have the ability to argue this forever until it gets escalated to TOB and y'all force me off. So sorry. Popping back to Lachlan, I don't remember because I have very limited stack space, but some stuff I wanted to respond to, I think. For proxies, you mentioned that adding a field would be a breaking change, and I don't think that's true. I mean, the extensibility concerns in OCI image spec have been there as far as I have cared about OCI, and I've done that most of my career. The point about the chicken and egg problem, I think, yeah, like that's something to be solved, but I don't think that's like why I opened this PR. Like I'm not pushing back against artifact manifest because it's not in heavy use right now. I'm pushing back on it because the boiling of the ocean to get every piece of software to support artifact manifest is not worth it when there's no tangible benefit, and we can solve the problem of the impossible fallback path. And by impossible, I mean really difficult to do, right? I mean, I have 3 or 4 ideas for how you could do it. I don't want to implement them, either client or registry side, but I don't think it is worth bending over backwards to support artifact manifest when it doesn't provide any tangible benefit to the universe, right? I think it's a mistake. I think it's a huge mistake. And I made my point. I will yield.
Aaron, I don't know if I came before you, but you haven't had a chance to talk yet today, so go ahead.
Yeah, I apologize. I was only able to join the call around 5 after. So I've likely missed some context, and I won't attempt to infer, I think, from John's elaborate stack popping, which was incredible, what people were saying before. I think just to clarify my own point of view here, I think if the conclusion of this discussion, whether it's image spec or artifact, is that there's a high quality guide for publishing artifacts and the conformance requirements are there, that I can know for certain as a tool, as an implementer, that OCI 1.1, that stamp of conformance on a registry, means that I will be able to use it to publish artifacts. That's the most desirable outcome. I think the issue is right now, there are a number of registries that maybe aren't OCI 1.0 or they are, but maybe they drop, like they reject, for example, the subject field, or they behave incorrectly, or tools might fail on inspecting layer blobs because the image spec doesn't specify anything. I think as some of the recent discussion has been about whether or not I should be allowed to push arbitrary content in layers. So I think I'm fine with image spec. It's just the pull request needs, I think, that revision and orientation towards assuaging the concerns of people who in this growing ecosystem of artifact authors, where if OCI 1.1 doesn't mean that their tools will work, then it kind of throws all of their future work into disarray, right? Like there's this huge ecosystem of people that want to use OCI, and it sounds like they may not be able to, and that's quite concerning.
Hey, Stephen, I know I was in front of you, but I'm not going to jump in front. Go for it.
Okay. All right. I became an engineering manager for like a year, so just take all this with a grain of salt, and I haven't been paying attention. So hopefully I understand the point that you're making. Don't worry, I'm an engineer again.
Hashtag relatable.
So John's point is extremely valid, and I don't want to like you can. What has been done with the image manifest always impresses me. It's always surprising. There's like some clever hacks with embedding types and annotations, and you can really get a lot done with it. And I've always been impressed with that. And also like things like star GZ, that's another one it's kind of impressive. That's not quite just image manifest. There's also some tricks with gzip and tar and everything like that. So I think I think it's extremely telling that it is quite. I'm pretty excited about how flexible that type's been. But my general concern with I don't think there was ever any time that when we were putting this together long ago that we meant for the image manifest type to be the only root type. In fact, it wasn't the only root type. We had like the V1 manifest, and we had the like V2 manifest that we called. We didn't really have good naming around that because it was a little confusing. And so, but it sounds like the main conflict here is like, can we introduce a root type without breaking compatibility across the ecosystem? Can I get like head nods if I'm understanding that correctly? Or if does that make sense? Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so my concern, and look, I was surprised the other day, I was doing like a brew update, right? Which I hadn't done in a year theoretically, right? I saw like image registry requests. I was like, wow, what has happened? But also that's great. And so I think that's a really good thing. And so I just want us to be really stepping carefully and going, yeah, we can make the old one work, but if this really does unlock some sort of key capability, we need to be clear about what that key capability is, even if the capability is simplicity, right? Or like easier understanding. So that would be my chief concern here, right? Like if we can't add a new root type because of like registry support, the problem is not necessarily the spec, but the registries, right? We got to go fix that in the registry somehow, even if it means, breaking a few eggs or something like that along the way. So, but John, your position is extremely pragmatic, and so I don't not acknowledge it. But that's my recommendation is for us to figure out a way in the ecosystem to make sure that we can extend it beyond root types. And if and it looks like Artifact Manifest, there's been a lot of effort put into it. I reviewed it early on in its life cycle. The spec I'm looking at here is a little bit different from what I reviewed, but that's the decision really being made today. So I don't know if I'm saying anything quite interesting. So I will stop talking now. But
so I'm going to reverse pop the stack now. Take John's position of popping all the stacks in backwards. So to the first comment there that you're making, I think this would be a lot less contentious if we didn't have a really good way to push artifacts today already. If we didn't already have the fallback of using the image manifest, I think there would be a lot less contention of there's a new functionality that we can't do any other way. I think we would all be on board with that. I would say no reason to wait at that point either. Just, it's a new feature, we need it. There's no other way around it. Let's just go with a new feature. But because we've been able to make this work with the image spec for so long, that's the reason this is as contentious as it is. And so the question then becomes, how do you go from something that kind of works good enough to something that works even better? And there's a hard transition to make that path when you're making that transition. Kind of going way back, we were saying, how about if we just make this experimental, or if we kind of release this in 1.2? And the challenge I have is if we make it experimental as a spec, is there a way to make it experimental just for the producers and not for the registry, stuff like that? Because otherwise it's still experimental when we release 1.2 and we're right back to the same point of how do you get that release to happen? So To me, it's
criteria to get out of experimental?
Yeah, to me, it's less of, it's an experimental feature and more of a staged rollout that we need to figure out how to do. And that's the harder challenge that we need to solve. That was kind of one of the other points. And I know there was a lot of discussion about, we're ripping this out, and I didn't say it earlier, but if we were to rip this out, I think there's still enough value that some people want to see this in the future that I would say it's not a rip out and forever discard, but probably a take this out and move it to a feature branch so that it's still visible that we're working on this. We're just trying to figure out how we can get this out there at some point in the future. It gives visibility to other people that can see that, hey, there's still something happening in OCI, while at the same time saying this isn't GA yet. And so that was another point in there. One last one. I know I'm popping the stack all over the place. Discovering features, discovering capabilities, having some kind of discoverability API, that works really good when you're talking to a registry, but doesn't help when that artifact moves from one registry to another registry, or when you're trying to discover the capabilities of the tooling that's going to read that manifest later on, because you don't know who's going to read that, how they're going to read that, what they're going to do with it. That was part of the challenge of just adding an API on there for discovery, that you don't get all the full picture out of it by having that API. So that was my backward stack pop. I didn't see the full order, but I know, John, you were on there after me, so go ahead.
Yeah, so I agree with Stephen emphatically that there needs to be a way to add functionality without having to worry about breaking existing implementations. I don't think that adding artifact manifest improves the situation at all. It just adds a third thing, and adding the fourth thing is exactly as painful as adding the third thing, right? Like if artifact manifest needs a new thing, I'm going to have the exact same argument with all of you in a year, right? The way that artifact manifest has been defined is basically just by the same thing, but we renamed some fields and moved some stuff around. And that's not appreciably different in a way that actually solves the problem of, hey, how do we actually add stuff to this, right? We have the only real extensibility mechanism that is documented in OCI 1.0 is like, oh yeah, you should be able to add a field without breaking existing implementations. That's great. We can do that. Say we can add artifact manifest to the descriptor type. I love that. That works. It's possible to define artifact manifest in a way that clients and registries will have to implement it in a way that it allows extensibility going forward, right? Like with Justin's proposal, which I hated, but he was getting at the problem of like, hey, like what if we made this extensible in some way? I think we fell for the like inner platform effect where we just redefined like a separate DSL inside JSON for describing relationships, and I thought it was terrible. But you know, there is a problem there to be solved that we were trying to solve. You know, one way I have solved this problem personally with my stupid little registry explorer website is by just duck typing JSON when I parse it. So if I parse a JSON document in a streaming way, if I'm inside an object that appears to be a descriptor, then I say, oh, this appears to be a descriptor. Like, let's see if it's a manifest. Maybe it's a blob. And so you can like use the shape of a descriptor while you're parsing JSON to actually infer structure from this document. Like, for example, artifact manifest stuff just kind of worked. Like, I hate it. I don't like artifact manifest, but my stupid little thing worked because there's descriptors, and I look for descriptors and I do things based on them. If artifact manifests were defined in that way, as like, hey, you know, this is a document, it has keys, which are either lists of the descriptors or strings, and there's also annotations. That, you know, that would be pretty extensible, and maybe descriptor needs a way to say, is this a manifest or a blob, because we made a huge mistake by having those be semantically different things in the registry. That would be enough for me to say like, oh cool, yeah, like we can just add fields and add descriptors that have different semantics and registries don't really have to know about them. That would be great. But like the way artifact manifest is currently defined is same thing, different field names, and I don't think that's sufficient to break stuff for it, because it doesn't change the state of the art.
Gotta shout.
Yeah, you gotta go loud and listen.
Really? I'm here.
Not good. One thing that I keep hearing is there's some people talk about artifacts. John is making the argument that it is.
Sorry, Brian, you're off the map.
Do you want someone to Brian, or do you want me to paraphrase?
Get out of your hobbit hole, Brian. Jeez Louise.
I like my hobbit hole. Give him a break, Vincent.
So, one thing I noticed is we seem to have two differing opinions that aren't really, we're not actually discussing that differentiation. You have one side that seems to think artifact types are useful and they're going to move things forward and all that, and then you have John's point of view, which he said repeatedly that there is no benefit to the artifact type. I feel like we just keep going past those assertions instead of talking about them and just like ripping it out and then saying, oh, we'll come back to it. We're going to be in the exact same place without addressing those concerns. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, and I think the way I'd respond to that is like, you know, Josh was just describing his experience with implementing it in Cosign and what Artifact meant to him. And I think, you know, he's not alone that other people see value in Artifact. I don't think that's a solitary view, but John doesn't see value in it.
I think structurally, there's nothing in the structure that says this is a huge added value. So I understand where John's coming from that point. I think logically, at that end point, when we get to that end goal of having a separate manifest there is something nice that says this is something that's not an image anymore. So I do see the value there. And so it's whether we're looking at the actual structure of the content in there and can we cram something into a format that already exists versus defining a new type of structure. That way the tooling is looking at it can say, oh, this is a different type. I need. That's the point to weigh on. Even I've seen your hand go up and down a few times. Jump on in here.
I was just gonna represent. You said me, right? Couldn't quite hear that. I was just gonna. I have to drop off here in a sec, but I would say if there is significant usage of this artifact type in the wild and it's out there, we might as well at least document it, because if we saw the platypus and we implemented the platypus, we can't pretend it didn't exist, and then figure out what to do with it spec wise over time, and make sure we, if we can differentiate it, we differentiate it. If we can't differentiate it, then we should make a recommendation that goes in line with that. I think that would be the most fair thing to do, and it wouldn't rip up anybody's implementation. So, but it was good to see you all, and hopefully I've added to this conversation rather than just confuse it. But I am on the OCI Slack, so if you all want to ping me, I can participate a little bit more. So have a good day.
Steve, as an Australian, before you go, it took us 20 years to convince the English that a platypus existed, even though we drew.
I know. That's why I referenced that story. They thought they glued it together or something like that, because that was common at the time. So, anyways, but hopefully that reference resonates. So, everybody have a great day, and good to see you all.
Thanks, Evo. You bet. You're up next.
Oh, I don't even know. I'm like, so what is the way forward? Separately, can we, unrelated to Artifact Manifest at all, can we say that we're going to take seriously finding some kind of versioning capabilities API thing so that registries can even explore adding and not potentially break clients, and knowing that will be a long tail that clients will add that?
I don't think that helps us in the scenario where you only know the version of the registry, you don't know the version of all the downstream tools that are working on that artifact after it hits the registry.
Mm-hmm. Sure. I mean, it's a very long tail. It's a long tail. God, I bet there's still pre-Docker 1.0 versions out there running. Anyhow, but I mean, like otherwise, in this is not a full Vim diff, but I mean, like truly between the current manifest.md and artifact.md for those watching at home. Is it really just the name of the blobs to layers field and then this artifact type field?
And config is going to be.
Media type.
Yeah, config is optional. Layers can be 0 and actually 0 byte.
So config and optional config went
Sorry,
away.
config
but
is
media
optional?
type config.
No.
not
I'm saying the fact that config goes away or is optional, like it's required for manifest. That's what I'm saying. Like truly making config. If config were optional and the name of blobs to layers, the only real difference that I'm seeing is this artifact type field.
You're asking if we made config optional inside of the image spec, we would have
No.
the same thing.
No. I'm sorry. Wait, let me try and be more unclear. Config is required for image manifest. There's no config in artifact manifest. So basically, if config were optional, then it could just not be there. And it would smell like an artifact. It would smell like an artifact manifest. So the only difference is then, if config were optional on whatever media type it's called, if that were the case, then the only difference is this field called blobs is otherwise called layers, because it still should, this says may, should be ordered, should maintain order. And then the only difference besides config and blobs is that artifacts have the artifact type.
The artifact type was migrating the media type from the config descriptor. So we moved that one field over. The other big difference was that.
Say that again in a different way for me. I'm sorry.
The descriptor on the config, the media type on that descriptor moved to be the artifact type. So it's the same field in two different entries. There's just no digest or other descriptor associated with it. It's just a media type at that point. So we moved that one field over. And then the other change was when we moved layers to blobs, we also said that instead of being ordered, like you were saying there, we also said it's unordered and it can be 0 in length. Another big difference where before it had to at least have one layer. So they're minor differences, though, to the point. They're not major differences.
I think maybe just for context, I don't know if everyone knows this, but Helm charts and other existing uses of artifacts were already sort of injecting their artifact type into the config media type field, which is sort of why we just kind of moved that over. Like that was
the way we documented it too in the OCI artifact repo.
Yeah.
Off such a tangent, I think I might have noted what I was going to say, but no, I don't. I forget what my hand was up for. Aaron, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say that like other artifact producers are going to be happy going to image spec. I think that John is 100% technically correct in his argument. It's absolutely correct. I think, could we agree on splitting the Gordian knot here by going through and figuring out what in terms of conformance we need to say, because I think that's what the downstream groups want, is people in the artifact ecosystem just want to know OCI 1.1 implies our customers can use that registry for artifacts. It really just boils down to that, is like that stamp of approval of conformance means that it just like removes a lot of edge cases from them debugging why does their tool not work with, you know, one of the major clouds registries or whatnot.
Conformance to me helps with registries, but we don't do conformance checks on tooling. And so we don't have a way to say your vulnerability scanner is 1.1 conformant. No. Yeah,
I think that unfortunately, like as John has said, is that ship has sailed. Is there's some garbage content and layers and blobs already in registries, and that's just how things are. And I don't know if we'll be able to put the horse back in that barn to add more idioms there. So I think it's unfortunate. If I put my security hat on, I am terrified by the idea that a bunch of legacy clients now have it essentially forced on them that if they crawl a registry, they're going to be, God knows what, C or assembly code is going to be parsing the content of a blob, and that scares the shit out of me. But that's already the status quo. So I don't know if we should try to change that.
I guess to rephrase that, we've got a way that we can test. You give us a registry server, we're going to push data to it. And if you respond to these APIs incorrectly, we're going to flag you and say you worked, you didn't work. And so we've got a way to test that. What we don't have a way is to say, here's a registry server with a bunch of data, process all this data, and let us know that you processed each of these different kinds of manifests, each of these different kinds of blobs and whatnot, and came out with the right response, because we don't know what people are doing with this. There's no way for us to write that kind of test right now, I don't think.
Yeah,
So
I don't know. I don't know if performance of the clients is as much what I'm angling for. I think, a lot of these people are potentially writing their own clients or using ORAS or whatever. But conformance of the registry, I think, is the most important.
That's the part that I'm angling for, because that's the part that I feel like we're going to break downstream, is all of those clients that are only written to work with a 1.0 registry, when they start seeing this stuff, they don't know how to parse it. That's where I feel like we're going to see a lot of breakages. That and trying to push this content to a 1.0 registry is going to be an issue. The part that I want to get to, though, is to say, I feel like there's at least some interest, probably more than half, and we want to have artifacts at some point. Maybe they're not the most valuable, but even if we don't want artifacts, we need to find a way as OCI for how we can roll out a change. So maybe this is just a good test scenario for how we can add something new to the spec. So the question there becomes, can we define what that process looks like, what that workflow looks like? Can we specify, hey, here's how we add a new thing where we know this is going to take X amount of time, and here's the change we're rolling out with for servers and for downstream consumers, but it's not a change for producers yet. And so is there a way we can differentiate those two pieces? That, to me, if we can get to that point where we can come up to that kind of agreement, I feel like we have a point where we can put everything in the 1.1. Be awesome. We can't get to that point, and I think we're saying let's at least defer this and get the refers out the door.
Is refers really the thing that people are screaming most about? I mean, Aaron in all the comments, and even unfortunately some of the WASM folks that have piped up in that thread aren't here, but is that really, it's not the refers API?
Refers is the thing that I've heard the most about, but I've been on the supply chain side a lot, and so if everybody wants to know about how to attach signatures, everybody wants to know how to attach an SBOM. That's the one that I hear the most screaming for on my side.
I think that's accurate. I wouldn't disagree with that, is that on the supply chain side, refers is like the thing. I think on the like Helm charts, WASM, et cetera side, it's like artifacts is what they're interested in.
I think too, like, it kind of goes back to something that John brought up, is that there is a solution for that. Like right now in our registry, you can push Helm charts and you can install Helm charts in a Kubernetes cluster directly from the registry. It works. It took forever, but there is a working example. I don't like it. I don't like how it works. I don't like images masquerading as other things, but it does work. And we don't expose it to users. And I think that's the thing we keep kind of catching up on. It's like, well, then the user has to. No, they don't. Client tooling has to, right? I'm kind of okay pushing that burden off a little bit. So for me, I think from context is we don't have a way for artifacts, lowercase artifacts or uppercase artifacts, to refer to images. And so that's the thing that doesn't exist. That's the thing that solves some problems. I'd love to hear from Josh on this, because I think, you know, for me, that's the most common, sort of most widely used tool set right now is the cosign, right, client, at least in my experience, coming from like Kubernetes. So like, to me, I think refers is magic there, because people's registries automatically kind of get cleaned up over time and it looks a lot prettier. I don't necessarily understand how artifacts, like an artifact media type, helps enormously. So I would like to understand that, but that's my take. So like, that's where at the very beginning I said, sort of like, for my position, I'm okay with or without, but it's refers that we're really after, because it's just, we don't have a way to do that right now.
So I guess I should have an opinion. I don't know.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot. You don't have to.
Let's see. So I'm trying to help with the cosign stuff now, and there's a bunch of tags already out there being pushed in the old way. And so unfortunately, that being the case, like the way that the code's being written is needing to go back and check for those things anyway. And so it does add a third fallback for this and everything in that ecosystem. And that's just speaking for one ecosystem. I like the last few comments about changing fields in the existing image manifest or making config optional. Could it be if config is not there, or if artifact type is there, we're parsing it in a different way, but it's still the same type, and it's just in how we're considering other fields there. We're already adding the subject field also as something that people need to know about to use these things. So
I think if you make config optional in the image manifest, a whole lot of stuff would break. So.
It would be just as easy to have a playbook of saying, if you're in the situation that you would think you just don't need the config, then pass application.txt and say farts in it, and then go on about your day, because it's like fishing with dynamite. Like that would be like, those are those kind of like simple, like we're working towards an ideal situation that we just can't drop. We can't make something that has been required optional suddenly. And if things come in and they are optional to begin with, then effectively we will keep ourselves in the position like John described of duck typing things constantly. Like a big case statement of like, does it have this, if this?
To be clear, I thought that was a good idea, but maybe it's a bad idea.
Which thing?
The duck typing.
I mean, that's the nature of duck typing.
Yeah, I don't
It's
know.
the thing that I loved and hated about the Ruby programming language. Does it respond to this?
On that note, do we want to take 10 minutes break until the top of the hour? Sneak some food out.
Yep.
All right. Think about how you
Sounds
want to
great.
roll this thing out,
Okay.
and see you guys in a couple minutes.
I have to say calls like this really help with the FOMO of not being able to attend certain conferences. So
Sorry, Vincent.
You are missing out
it's-
on a good time.
I'm sure.
Brandon was just dancing in the vendor hall with a VR headset on.
It's like KubeCon 2018.
it was
Kelsey's even here.
It was like a.
So mean.
You should have seen the dodge maneuver I had to do with the VR guy, because he was all over the place. I'd like duck and swivel, and it was scary. My life flashed before my eyes.
Yeah, well, I got a drink refill and a cat has blessed me with their presence. So take that, nerd.
Cheers, Vincent.
Now working on the FOMO.
Yeah, Jesse's joined me. Okay, cat, move on.
7 o'clock, and I'm trying to force myself into listening mode now.
I've already got no more fucks to give. Come on, cat.
It's great seeing Steven. That was crazy.
That's awesome.
I almost was like, Steve-o, but then I was like, I don't know if that's not appropriate.
That's
so I
weird.
just randomly said his name.
I don't know how I keep getting place myself in the position in charge of all this stuff. Everybody keeps turning toward me as if I'm in charge of things somehow.
That's what happens when you're closest to the microphone,
I'm happy
Brandon.
to look for you, Brandon, 'cause I usually thought that's my spirit animal is just to jump on that, but I'm like, please.
I gave you the parting thoughts. What are the thoughts of trying to find some way that we can come up with a transition? And is that possible? Possible to say, let's have this stage where we go from it's proposed, it's out there in the spec, but we're not using it, to we'll later use it, because I feel like if we can get there, part of me feels like there are a lot of people that will like where that is. That gives us the path forward. We know that there's a way we can add new stuff into the spec. And it's also the way we can assuage at least some of the terrors out there of we're going to break everything in production when we do this, which we still will, but at least less violently and less quickly.
Well, I will not. I will not discount the optics of this situation, that to Delitsky's frustration of how do we make changes and come to consensus in this group, and then we've known that it takes a long time and it's through like wailing and gnashing of teeth, and now going through a period where maintainers have gone quiet and stale because things are working and we could just like leave it alone for a while. And how do we rally that? And it was painful, and then we finally rallied, and it was a working group, and there was changes made, and we were making headway, and people got excited, and then that changes all of a sudden. That is a poor situation to be in. So I'm not going to discount that situation, because that is, I feel like almost the optics of this are almost as much of a situation here as the technical, like breaking clients and backwards compatibility.
Vincent, I'd agree with you, and just add a bit that I think that's a majority of the voice that Aaron has brought. Just to drop not putting you on the spot, you don't have to unmute and say anything. I just wanted to call that out. I think that's really one of the parts of this that you've been contributing to. Yeah, I'll stop there.
I would say, I think a lot of this, when we were putting up the spec, a lot of us were looking at very abstract things. We saw the concept. We didn't see the implementations coming down the pipe. And so once we started seeing the implementations coming down the pipe, we started realizing that there were gaps that we didn't foresee early.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
So,
To what you were saying, Vincent, I think that's whatever the outcome here is, we're sending a message. But when I think just based on what you said, was we managed to rally a group to come together to do something. And I think because we had that energy in that group, we tried to shove more things in, honestly. And Artifacts is probably, you know, we could have pushed it out to something else, but we had the group, and hence it came in at the same time. Because the amount of energy and momentum we had, we felt like we could do that at the same time. Right, so now, because those things are conflated, now we've got this, we want referrers, but we did Artifacts at the same time, and that's because, from my perspective, we had the momentum, and it was like, well, let's do a couple of things here, because we got the momentum. But whatever the decision, you send a message either way, and I think we need to be very clear. Like, if we do drop Artifacts right now, it's, are we making a statement that we do see value in this, and we do want to approach this, and under what pretenses we do that? Because, you know, as, was it Aaron? Sorry? Yeah. As Aaron said, you know, from the WASM folks and, you know, the Artifacts of tomorrow, we're going to be sending a message to them if we decide to cut this, and we want to make sure we don't, well, we may want to scare them off and say, go figure this out somewhere else, don't do it here, or please come and we want to have that discussion and figure this out together. Because I think, you know, if we make a decision to not do it in OCI now, and people will probably show back up at auras and start to pick up the conversation there, and then they'll say, well, why isn't this, and rinse and repeat again, which is where this was born out of. But I just, all this to say, I think the concept of the momentum got everybody excited. So it's like, do you want to harness that and keep those people to continue bringing these things, or do you kind of want to say, look, we're done, 1.0, go find another place to do these APIs? I feel like that could also be the message that I send. And I'm not a maintainer on any of this, but I think optics, how it's perceived, is a big piece of it.
We had the momentum, and I think a lot of that came from, we were looking at where we wanted to get to. We saw the destination. We all started coding up the destination, a lot of different tools. We threw out some examples. We showed that it worked. And it looked really good to everybody, and so everybody said, great, this is awesome. We threw into our proposal a migration plan. We said we're going to do A, B, and C. But we never put that into a spec, and we never actually took the time to really work through what that C step meant of, we need to wait for enough time before we took this new thing. And we just put everything in the spec, and we never put that migration plan in there, and so now I think we're running into this challenge of, we never defined it. We need to figure out how we define it. Plan looks like. Jesse, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just to say, like, I have there's 2 PRs that I've worked on and dropped and worked on and dropped, and Sajay knows the intimate details of some of these things because I worked on them, and then they have been so contentious to even discuss that I'm like, I'm not open to that. That's like, I don't want to derail us. They are, you know, basically a capabilities endpoint for a client to have a sane vision of what the registry it's talking to is capable of doing. And the other is, you know, basically implementation guidance, implementers notes. So that doesn't exist, right? I don't know, and I'm down with both of those. I think for a sane, specification, sane implementation pattern for clients, and also just a spec should have guidance. Like, I get that. I don't know that any of that really addresses what John's concern is. So I kind of, and I'm not asking him back to the mic. I know he said he said his piece, and he said it very well. And you come back to the mic, obviously I'm not speaking for you. I didn't want to put you on the spot. I always feel like with remote and hybrid, it's like, it's weird. But I mean, I think we're not really addressing that. And I think my take on that has been, is there a way to unstick that valid concern and that ongoing conversation from referrers? And, you know, I threw Josh, under the spotlight too, because he had said, he was excited about artifacts. And I was just like, I don't understand the tangible value of that media type versus the referrers. Like right now, I can tell you, we have customers in ECR using cosign, and it's just like all these tags everywhere, and there's long, ugly things. And like, I don't know, I never look at registers. I just write code, and like things happen and pipelines run. But people do open consoles and look at things, and they don't like it. It's ugly. So it'd be great to get rid of that. I don't understand how capital A artifacts fixes that versus the referrers API fixes that. And if that is the thing that we want to solve for cosign, for notary, for SBOMs, for all these other things that we all have to build and evolve, I feel like, you know, there could be something here where we just like decouple these things without dropping one, without sending a message that that's not welcome here. Like what happens? So let me say this and then I'm going to go on mute. What happens if we decouple the distribution spec 1.1 from the image spec 1.1 and the image spec 1.1 runs at an RC and we keep on going with that and we keep the discussion going and distribution's language changes back to referring to, you know, the lowercase a artifacts and we release referrers in 1.1 distribution. Right now we have registries done. Registries can implement that. It can be there. And then as image iterates through artifact, you know, we have registries to talk to. Or is there value in that? Or is that so verboten that we decouple the minor versions of the specs?
Not worried about the version number, but there's stuff in the image spec that we need for the distribution.
Well, that's just, I mean, I think we could make minor changes. Like, I mean, it's kind of this is kind of back to John's point. Like, is there stuff we really need, or is there stuff in there because we did them together? Right. I mean, those are solvable problems. Sajay, if you're talking, you're not coming through. Sorry.
Not. And you got your hand up. You want to come on over?
So I'll just chime in and say, as a runtime implementer, I actually want the breakage. Like, I don't want someone to say, oh, go pull this image and try to open it up and be like, this doesn't work. I don't know what to tell you. Because it says it's an image, it's got these layers. I tried to apply these layers and it doesn't do anything. I think the breakage is good in that case. That said, adding fields to the existing spec can help with that. For older clients that run into that behavior of like, well, this said it's an image, but not behaving the way I want it to behave.
Gosh.
I think one of the things that is completely lost in this specific 999 discussion is that we are adding artifacts. Lowercase, I liked how Jesse said uppercase, lowercase. Lowercase artifacts are being codified. So what Oras has done, what Helm has done, what used to be in github.com/opencontainers/artifacts, which I think still remains today as a mystery of if it's distribution spec 1.0 compliant, that like Oras originating thing, whatever you want to call it, is being codified in 1.1. And you can look at the cosign PR that's using config.media type as the way to push artifact type out the other end of refers. And I think that it's being lost that we are bringing OCI lowercase artifacts. So, and then I like what Brian just said about adding fields, like maybe we can't remove config, but can we add artifact type to image and then have that type of fallback on the top level structure versus it's a whole different thing in the headers and on that layer. So
I feel like the complication of adding fields is that it doesn't help with the scenario that they're trying to get rid of fields. They're trying to get to a zero length layer list, and they're trying to get rid of that config descriptor. For everything else, though, it's really useful. may have just talked ourselves to death today.
No, yeah, also yes, but no, I mean, and I'm glad that maybe not quite half of us is in person, so y'all can laugh together.
Oh, there's no laughing in here.
Oh, no laughing in there. Okay, sorry. Y'all can look sternly at each other, stare deeply.
We're gonna fight out in the VR after this.
Yeah, yeah. The VR fight
But-
afterwards.
But it did. I mean, because obviously there's a lot of strong feelings in that issue, and I think that's what people are feeling when they feel like it's gone sideways or they're not quite sure what they're reading. Because I think there are strong feelings of like, honestly, I'm sad that Stephen Day bounced in and bounced out, because there were times when Stephen had issues over the years, and it was just like it came across to everybody else in the community of just like fear and uncertainty, like this will cause issues, and everybody else in the community was like, oh my gosh, will you just like give me a technical conversation or what? And that you know, like sometimes that does happen, I think, because some of us are either very invested in one side of the implementation or the other, the burden, or having to work around it. So this kind of conversation, as burdening as it is to have a video call or whatever chat to talk as humans, does sometimes convey something in a higher bandwidth than trying to figure out what people are talking about on an issue that's going sideways. All that being said, how do things, like, does this mean, like, do we have to have like a blog of like, this is a valid use case? As OCI, this is absolutely a valid use case, and this is how we're accommodating it and how we're not blocking it. In many ways, we're trying to like literally facilitate it so that it can reach as many clients as possible. Like, because your use case is valid, here's how we're trying to enable it to reach as many clients as possible and not just literally go fishing with dynamite.
I feel like you would get a 90% agree that adding the artifact manifest type is valuable.
At least the use cases that it's the people that feel strong about it, the use cases are valid.
I think 90% of the people would say it's valid.
And so, like, as disgraceful as it is to say, we'll bolt it onto image manifest and try and figure out a way that we can do this without literally fishing with dynamite. To say we validate this use case, and because we validate it, we're trying to not give you the foot gun to go shoot yourself with.
I feel like the biggest challenge is how do we get there? We know we want to get there, we don't know how. Or we can't get consensus amongst everybody about how. We know what we can do now in the short term, which is we don't have it and we just keep it with the image spec. We know where we want to be in the long term. We don't know how to bridge that gap. The proposal I would throw out there, and I can make it a PR, I will say it in advance so I don't freak anybody out with the PR showing up there, is to say that, hey, let's make the artifact manifest just something that producers shall not produce without some kind of experimental flag on their tooling, without some kind of explicit user input that is really pushing this. That you're not going to produce this automatically, you're not going to produce it by default in any way, shape, or form for X amount of time. I'm comfortable if somebody wants to start discussing time frames in there. Now the blue one just say 1 year.
I don't think we should ever condone automatic creation. Right, we talked about that before. I mean, that's the hang up, is that at no point does automatically moving over to generating a non-portable artifact make sense on the producer side, like on the artifact creator side.
I feel like I've heard from multiple people saying on the artifact creation side they want to default to the artifact manifest as soon as the registry supports it.
Yeah, that's not the same thing. That doesn't mean automatic. So if you default to 1.1, so take notation, for example. So notation right now, the implementation plan is to default to 1.1 and have user input for legacy. Right. So I would never change that in the future to having the default, well, so that, I mean, that's the reason that the default is 1.1. If you went with a default of legacy and then said, by the way, you can optionally use this experimental feature, I would never do that automatically in the future. That's the reason for defaulting to present, right? So if you default to 1.1 and then optionally do legacy, then the user can drop the optional legacy flag whenever they want. There's no automatic surprise non-portable artifacts that way.
I am comfortable saying that you can create something one day with one default and change that default the next day. I'm comfortable saying that because I feel like we've seen that before. We've seen container image build tools out there that will do a Docker build or something like that and create a Docker manifest one day, and then in the future switch over and be an OCI manifest. It just took them time to make that change in their code, and they might have announced that to the users, or maybe they didn't sometimes.
I'll stop. I mean, this is back to implementation details of particular tooling. I don't think this is a spec thing.
It's not a spec thing. This is a consensus thing of saying, is OCI a group that is being consensus among the projects? And so that's where I was getting to. Are we making a spec, or are we coming up with a consensus among the projects?
That makes sense. I mean, I think it's both, right? I mean, I think we all have a consensus that we don't want to break people. like let's just agree. Like, actually, you guys are in a room. You can walk out the room if you want to break people. No, nobody left. Right. I mean, I think we all agree on that. The question is,
I'm sorry. It's just your New England pronunciation of rum. That's all.
Rum? Do you? No. So like that's. I mean,
I get what you're saying. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to make a dig at you. Sorry.
Yeah. Anytime. But I mean, I think the thing is like we are. Like as Vincent said before, like we're dangerously close to just going into a holding pattern that looks like work. I don't want to do that. Like I want to ship things, right? This is good. Like making progress. I feel like that's what we're at the precipice of. If we continue to kind of like vacillate on how people will build things.
My fear is I feel like we're at the precipice of a permanent logjam or a temporary logjam. I'd much rather have a temporary logjam than a permanent one. Michael, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
I don't really see why we would set a date for when like clients should switch over now. Like it feels as though we could say, this is what we know now. You should probably use the image manifest. We have this experimental artifact feature. You know, implement that however you want. Clients' implementations are not, you know, we have a spec, they have the implementations. Presumably, most clients will just use the image manifest, and then there'll be some experimental stuff that goes on that validates that use case. And then, you know, in a future version of the spec, we might change that guidance, or like it wouldn't be hey, in a year from now, we're going to change this, because what if in a year from now, nobody's adopted it? We don't know. Or what if in 6 months, every single registry in the world has updated? And so I wouldn't put a timeline on it. I would just say, this is what we know now. This is the recommendation, and like let people do what they want to do, and that's where we have to just kind of let our baby out into the wild and see what happens. And if things break, then users will probably not use that tool, or they'll give feedback and the tool will change their implementation. But we can't remove all of the possible paper cuts from every possible implementation, because then there's like not a lot of space for people to innovate.
So to scope that back, I know whatever data I put in is going to be too soon for a lot of people. I've seen enough DoD environments that are gapped where 5 years is too soon for them, but we're not going to solve the problem for everybody. And it's also not saying that on 1 year, everything must switch over. It's saying that for at least 1 year, you won't change this on your end users.
But Brandon, that's not how air gap environments work. They stay on Linux kernel 2.4 and then they move to 4.10, right? They don't go to 4.10 but withhold some capabilities and like have a config file that says don't turn those things on, right? Like I don't understand why the date just seems like a slippery slope of very difficult. Like it's a spec. It's not an implementation. It's not a design spec. It's not requirements. Compliance, we're conflating specification and compliance with a specification.
So short of having a date in there, since that's a big no, VBAC, sorry.
Sorry, I should have raised my hand. I guess I would just say registries are free to stay on OCI 1.0, right? If they do not want to support artifact and future evolutions of the standard, I guess there's a potential, there's a risk, of course, that enough registries would say that they do not like that artifact thing and they go form their own new committee. That would, I think, probably be a terrible outcome, but I don't think that seems like a likely one at this point. Seems like there's a lot of interest in artifact. So I don't know what's solved by the date being held off. Yes.
Sorry, my audio must have dropped out for a second. So even just trying to figure out, like, are we approaching at the use case is useful, screw it, we'll merge it, and people may or may not use it. And with it, like, we can't expect users will have portability until there's some adoption and there will be breakage and it's accepted. Or, I mean,
the only
like,
Vincent, the only portability issue I've heard is portability back into legacy. That will never be solved.
yeah, and that has literally been the case since the beginning of my involvement in this whole thing. Like when we had
It's the beginning of time.
pre-Docker 1.0, there were things, and there was like, you wouldn't believe how many pre-1.0 clients are still out there running in the wild, and it's like,
and so
good
be
luck.
they, and so be they, right? That's fine, and that artifact continues to work because we have a backward compatibility mandate, right? Like we will. That's fine. There's no guarantee that electric cats attached to your images in the future will work on a 1.0 registry. It's never a requirement. It never will be a requirement. I just want to be clear about that.
So then, I mean, like, what mitigates anything here of, like, if there's breakage for no differentiable reason except for maybe the artifact type field. Literally, as that's what I was trying to get to when I shared my screen earlier. It's like, if this is the field and anything else we could just call as, like, however you're referring to this media type, and whatever duct tape you have to put on it is really just, we're basically down to a certain field. Or if we're trying to work towards an ideal here, and any, throw a dog a bone, any bone that we can throw to any client and or user that is trying to discover whether or not this thing is capable and they want to go down the duct typing avenue, or we provide some kind of a capability feature set version flag endpoint that would help now and this same, an iteration of the same conversation a year from now when there's next contentious breaking change. Do we go ahead and have that conversation is really what I feel like we're having. Like, we'll figure out some way to make this use case work, but it will be painful. And we know that we'll have this conversation again in 6 months or a year time with, N+1 feature. Do we go ahead and address that?
The capabilities doesn't help me in the situation where you've got 2 registries within a single environment. And the first registry is your CI server registry you're doing all your image builds on. Second registry is your production registry. It always gets upgraded 6 months later because they're just a little bit more cautious about that registry. It doesn't help when you're trying to put stuff in there you need to use in production.
The first
Put it in
time.
there with the older. That?
The first time.
So before you upgrade that registry, everything's 1.0. Everything's portable. Everything works. As soon as you upgrade that first registry in the CI server to 1.1, you start getting artifacts in there that you can't push to the production side, and suddenly production goes down. That's what doesn't help me in that scenario.
That's it. Well, it does. That's why I'm saying, do we need that? Is that actually the conversation here? That we actually enable that discovery first, so that there's a bootstrapping for this, whether it's this issue or it's N+1 issue that's considered breaking.
How do you do the discovery across registries, though? Because the CI server doesn't see the production registry.
No, you're going to push something. Okay, yeah.
I think there might be an assumption that maybe tooling is. I don't think there's a lot of tooling, at least from folks I've talked to, where there'd be a strong interest in producing A or B. I think people want artifact, right? And then your tooling is going to produce artifacts. Again, whether that's image spec or artifact spec. So if you don't want to run like Mac OS 13.x binaries, don't build Mac OS 13.x binaries and push them to production, right? Or equivalently, don't push a kernel that's not available in your air-gapped environment. It seems like it's orthogonal. If there's some sort of some issue in CI where you're pushing pre-supported features and then trying to upgrade them into an unsupported environment.
In the environments that I'm dealing in, they're looking at secure supply chains. They're looking at how do you attach the signatures in the SBOM to the image. They don't care what kind of artifact it is. They just care that that's portable from the one environment to the other environment, because production is looking and saying only deploy something when it's signed.
So I feel like we're kind of potentially rat holing. I'm just gonna throw out a quick observation. There's no legitimate CI system on the planet that I know of that would do things in one phase and then not be supported downstream and be like, oh, that's bad. You shouldn't do that, right? You do ABC, you do ABC. You don't do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then do ABC here, right? So I feel like, again, it's an implementation thing too.
The scenario I'm throwing out there is you've got your CI server has its registry. You will upgrade that registry from 1.0 to 1.1. At that point, would you push artifacts with the artifact manifest of that registry?
Only if I want to continue to use them downstream. I think you're arguing against automatic upgrade, surprise artifacts. We've all agreed that's a bad idea. We should not do that. So if you're using, for example, if you're using notation defaults to 1.1, you're using Zot in your build environment, you push a notation signature as a 1.1 OCI artifact, capital A artifact, and then you're pushing, continuing down to some production registry, right, that doesn't support that, it's 1.0, breaks. That happens the first time, which was what VBAT's observation was. The first time that happens, that's not a problem. And it's not a specification problem, and I don't see it's a reason to hold things up. John's arguments against artifact make sense to me. These don't make sense to me.
So that was a problem to me when you said that as soon as you push from a 1.1 to a 1.0, it's going to break, because you might not have had a 1.1 registry to start with. You might have had a 1.0 registry to start with on CI. And then
then you're not going to
decide-
consciously create 1.1 artifacts, right? You're just gonna
Correct, but hang on.
you're oblivious.
Hang on. On December whatever, you decide we're in our freeze period, we got some time to work on something in development because we can't change anything in production right now. And so you upgrade that development registry server to 1.1.
Okay.
From that point forward, those artifacts that are created in development can no longer be copied to production.
Why?
Because your creation system looks and says, hey, I'm a 1.1 creation system that's talking to a 1.1 registry now. Before, when I was talking to a 1.0 registry, I was going to create those artifacts with the old manifest.
I gave you a very tangible example of notation, right? Notation will default to 1.1. In that scenario, you'll now push a signature 1.1, and then downstream will break once. Your CI pipeline will break once, and you'll go, what happened? And you'll fix it. I really do think, I tried to stop us from rat holing. I think we're rat holing. I don't see this as a spec problem.
Challenge to me is when you have something that breaks because you made a change in development and that takes on production.
Toddy's Zoom hand is up and his in-room hand is up. I mean, sorry, Toddy.
Jesse, actually, so I have a question for you, how often actually this happens, but I want to expand on Jesse's scenarios. What actually will happen in notation is while you have the 1.0 registry, you implement the force flag to push the artifacts with the old manifest. So even if you upgrade it, you still can push them with the old manifest, right? Unless you go and explicitly say, now I want to push them with the new one. So
That's right. No surprise artifacts. That's right, Toddy. But even if you then dropped it because you're a developer and you think you know best, the CI pipeline will break exactly once.
Have whole clouds actually, because developers think they are the best, right? So that is conscious decision that whoever is developing the scripts and pushing to the registries needs to make to actually switch from one to the other. And that should be implemented in the tooling, right? And that's why I'm asking how often is this scenario like,
Copying from one registry to another?
No, copying between different registries, which are actually the one that you copy from is more advanced than the one that you copy to, because I've seen those scenarios for copying, but they're mostly from older version to a newer version.
Every single person out there that is copying from Docker Hub to their Artifactory instance has Docker Hub's already supporting the new artifact manifest, and I guarantee Artifactory isn't there yet.
Well, that is true, but is the content pushed with the new artifact manifest? I don't think in Docker Hub they are pushed with the artifact manifest.
It can be if the tooling does that, and so my request is that the tooling shouldn't do that. And we haven't released this GA yet, and so that hasn't become an issue, but we see the writing on the wall that it will become an issue the second we.
Fair point. I see where you're coming, and Docker, like, I think what you want to say is how do we notify those that the artifact, because Docker Hub you can push old artifacts and the new, with the old manifest and the new manifest.
But the person that's pushing the artifact might not be the same person that is pulling it.
That
and
is true.
So, yes, it breaks only once, but now you have to open a PR with the upstream producer to fix their pipeline to fix your stuff.
Yeah, that's a valid scenario, but I am struggling how we can tell the consumer this artifact is pushed with manifest and this one is old one.
One breaks.
Yeah, one breaks. As Jesse said, like if I want to use like Jesse's like artifact that is pushed to Docker Hub, when I try to deploy it, it will break, and or to copy it, it will break. I agree with the scenario. I think.
Squeaky wheel.
Sorry, Vincent?
Squeaky wheel.
Go ahead, squeak, Vincent.
No, I'm just saying, like, I want to deploy what Jesse pushed to Docker Hub, and then it breaks, then I'll go knocking on doors. Whether it's like tried to push it to some cloud vendor, then I'll open a PR with them or, issue with them. They say, oh, it's because of this upstream issue, and they go open. That's a squeaky wheel.
But do they blame the upstream? Do they blame the Ubuntu producer? Do they blame the?
Oh, everybody. Literally, we're all
blame
guilty by association. So
I'm gonna
you're here,
tell
you're guilty.
I'm gonna tell you, as the biggest registry on the planet, they just blame us. That's it.
Major will go off.
Should we go back to hands? We got more hands.
I don't know who was first.
Michael.
I'm gonna lower my hand.
What?
That's not helpful. Come on, man. No, mine was as silly as like, Aaron, you earlier were talking about. I think you even used OSX as an example, but if any of us could learn from the example of when they went from PowerPC to Intel, how long did they have to carry and make binaries that could do, or packages that could do both? And then eventually there was a time when it was like, nope, this is only available on Intel, and people still were like, it feels like an analogous thing of like they gave years for people to be able to migrate to a new type, and people still are going to be people are still going to feel like they're left in the lurch, and there'll be squeaky wheels somewhere.
Yeah. People still feel like that about IPv4. They feel like they haven't been given enough time with V6.
Is there an alternative? I haven't seen it.
You can't take my token ring network from me.
It just, you like literally just triggered so much PTSD for me. You have no idea.
All right.
Yeah. 10 years.
I want to let you know I put the artifact manifest into ChatGPT, and it said you should ship it. And hopefully the data set for GPT-4 will have looked at this PR, and it can tell if it's a mistake in the next 6 months.
Just killed it. Lucky. You just killed it.
The judge.
You know how unreliable ChatGPT is, right?
It's very confident when it says, though.
Hey, I was very confident in me.
That's what you want.
Yeah.
So let me
I
ask
feel
you-
like we need a ChatGPT decision here. What would you do?
If the consensus is that trying to say date is not the right way of solving this, what is a way to solve this in a way that's some kind of controlled transition? Blame every tool creator when they do something too soon?
Well, I mean, are we still worried about automatic though? Sorry, Sajay, I see your hand, but like, I just want to clarify that. Like, are we still worried about automatic, or what we were calling upgrade? Like, I think that is something that we should absolutely tell people just not to do. Like, no surprise artifacts for your users.
Your definition of automatic and mine might be different. So can I get you to clarify what you mean by automatic?
Like, I create artifacts, lowercase a artifacts, and then the registry I'm talking to is 1.1. I will create capital A artifacts for you, right?
I can give a concrete example. ORAS does
Sure.
this now, and I think it's actually bad. It's poor behavior is that ORAS will try to push an OCI 1.1 capital A artifact, and then if that fails, it'll retry and push an image spec artifact.
Toddy's saying no. Toddy's saying no. Is there a switch, Toddy?
No, I'm not saying no. I'm shaking my hand because.
Oh, that was an admonishment of ORAS behavior.
That is implemented in ORAS, but that's.
Aaron, that's a good example. If something is automatically just doing it.
I think that, looking at the adage, like being liberal in what you accept and being conservative in what you send, right? That's the opposite, right? It's like, it's trying to just send all the flavors, and then ironically the ORAS API does the other thing, is that you have to be very explicit in how you parse the responses. It's like just backwards. But I do think that is probably going to be the aberration. I think the squeaky wheel, what you said, Vincent, is like, if tools are doing that, we should be admonishing those tools and saying, be intentional in what you're producing, because we don't want people to upgrade into a tool and then have that suddenly break because their registry is OCI 1.0, right? That's not desirable.
Jesse, to this one, like, it's something that happens automatically. It's very unreliable. So all the investigations that we did is like best effort stuff, and that's why we went with explicit switch for notation, because we don't want to do that there.
No, that's the I think that's the reference. And to Brandon's like basically fears of breaking tooling and breaking portability, that is the advice that should come along with the specification, is to say, hey, y'all, this is the first time we've had a minor version in 8 years. Like, there's a new thing here that is not portable to legacy, right? It is a forward moving feature. So don't automatically create these when you encounter a 1.1. Explicitly create these. The only thing you should automatically do is 1.0 behavior. Now, you can default to 1.1 as long as you have a fallback that's a call out, and that gives you the same behavior. So I mean, this is exactly the same thing that we dealt with for years in version file systems, and you know, this is proven ground. And I think that's the thing, is if we can get if we can get on the other side of this and have some faith that the specification can exist with some good advice for implementers, then we can move on from this. And I still kind of feel like there's unanswered questions otherwise, but like this part, I just want to unstick.
So let's unstick it.
If I may, I am happy. Sorry, I'm happy to suggest or make a PR to Artifact or Image or whichever, which might unblock this, or someone could do the same, which is that implementation should or maybe must be explicit in the media type that they are pushing, that you should not have sort of automatic fallback, like, or automatic behavior of based on the registry version of choosing, because that does make it non-portable. For example, relying on a SHA, right? If you want to have a signed manifest, you have to have that be a consistent, and I think that's referenced elsewhere in the spec, is that, you know, registries should not modify manifest, because that again makes the SHA not content addressable. So I think a should that tools must be explicit in what they produce is a fine addition there.
I mean, I like that idea, just for clarity's sake. Unrelated, but that kind of clarity immediately triggered for me the existing pain of like pulling through or recursing through different types of when you like go to fetch an image and then it pulls through a platform type and you eventually getting an ARM or an AMD 64-bit. And you don't actually know what you pulled because it hopped through several different things. Like, I feel like tools should be explicit of like what they actually fetched to the types that they pushed and or pulled. That nature of clarity I appreciate, and I think it would help everybody in the world.
On the Aura side, I hear you saying you want to change or undo that definition.
Oh yeah, certainly.
What does the future look like for where you're going to be? Logic, what's the decision? When are you going to make the switch? Where are you going? One of them was mine.
Okay. Do you want to take that, or?
Yeah, we would like to make this explicit. As a time frame, I don't have actually time right now, but we can try to fix relatively fast. A lot of time discussing this back, not only for us, but also for notation. And it's something that about the capability API that I like to have a way to
Toddy, do you mind speaking up? The volume is just low enough that it's cutting out and we're not.
Okay. So what I was saying is that we would like to go with explicit switches in ORAS, but ideally we would like to have a way to query for capabilities in the registry, so we know whether certain capability exists and how to handle that capability in order to do automatic fallback. So doing automatic fallback without capability API turned out to be pretty hard. Okay. Anything else you want to add? Or?
Yeah, there's some history around that. Artifact manifest was in ORAS. As a part of the ORAS project, we could default. Now that it's moved to OCI and portability is important, that is the only way. That's why historically that flag was not there. Toddy's exercise of going and looking at different registry implementations, how it failed all over the place, even as we need to switch to. Timeline wise,
Sajay, you're
about half of. Yeah.
I'll repeat them. Go ahead. Go ahead and finish. I'll repeat them.
That's all I had. If you want to.
Okay. So the bit I heard was that they saw some challenges with doing the automatic detection right now without a capabilities API. They're going to make it explicit in the future so that you have to pass something. What I'm not sure of though is when you're explicit in there, is everybody going to be explicit? Or are you saying that everybody's being explicit will start being explicit with the image manifest to start with, and then you're going to wait for X amount of time before you switch it to being explicit for the artifact?
Actually, the way that I think we'll approach it is it will be default artifact with explicit.
There's no fallback. If it fails, there's no fallback. So
Yeah, no automatic fallback.
So if you're failing with artifact, you have to pass in saying that you're going to be
Yeah, there's nothing in, so Sajay, I'm agreeing with you. There's nothing in fallback that indicates it has to be automatic. So it's a manual fallback. That is the sane way to do that. Yeah.
So it's a conscious decision of whoever actually pushes the artifact to say, I want to push it this way, the 1.0 or the 1.1.
So for doing the manual explicit fallback, what's the need for the capabilities API in that scenario?
There is
no need.
Okay.
Don't need it.
Okay.
We don't need it.
All right. I think we're clear on this side. John, jump ahead.
I felt like we were really close earlier to realizing that we can just drop it by adding a field. But if not, and I misunderstood where we got to, I think dropping artifact manifest and adding a field to image manifest and like conformance testing and language around enshrining the artifact stuff with image manifest makes this conversation go away we spent 30 minutes on, where I think I convincingly argued that they're functionally equivalent, other than I will yield to Sajay's point that you will save about 100 bytes in the case of 0 blob artifacts. But I will also point out that in 1 blob artifacts, you will save artifact type string length bytes by using the config descriptor instead of duplicating the media type twice. I think the path forward is to amend the image manifest to address everyone's concerns to make them even more similar. And I think that's much easier than, mandating all clients have like a flag that makes you specify, hey, I want to break everyone versus, hey, I don't want to break everyone. So yeah, I had a point, but I don't remember. By the time I started talking, I got hung up on this. Sorry. But yeah, does anyone see that as a path forward, or do we really want artifact manifest still like very strongly?
I just want to ask, I'm sorry, I don't know everyone's name yet. And there's someone by the name of CPU guy.
Brian.
Brian, thank you. And you spoke on behalf of runtimes. And I just want to, I I want to understand better the perspective of the concern about runtimes and arbitrary content and layers. Like, is this a security concern that should be like elevated and be the primary concern? Is it the optics? What?
I would say, well, one, I don't speak for all runtimes or all runtime maintainers, but I would say that it's about how to respond to a user when they've given us reference to something that is clearly not an image, but there's no way for the runtime to know that this is not an image except something didn't work and we're just going to spit some error back. That
I think rephrasing that is, from all of the container runtimes I've seen out there, they would really like to see the artifact manifest just because.
That's what's in my head.
Because looking at that, following it down to the config media type or something like that, which hasn't always been reliable because some people. I see the value for you.
Said an extra field on the image manifest works. Forward. It doesn't work for backwards compat, but it works.
I'm typing up what I feel like is my summary into this 999. And y'all can correct me if I'm wrong. And as soon as we end the recording of this, which our time slot ends in 5 minutes, I will get it posted to YouTube ASAP. It'll take some time for processing.
John, I actually have a concern with the image manifest masquerading again. So, again, maybe for the room. A lot of producers who are using manifest in the current, we change it or change that behavior affecting existing.
Clients are depending on the artifacts being passed using. Yeah.
So
I think you're gonna have to get a little closer.
So Sajay's point is that there's a lot of tooling out there to parse artifacts today that rely on them being passed as the image spec. And so we don't want to break them by switching to the artifact spec right away. And I think that is part of producer distribution and consumer.
No, that's not what you're saying. I don't think that's what he's saying.
So the big media type is
in the image spec.
In the image spec is already used. So if we
Such a meaning we shouldn't make it optional, right? Because it's already perceived by a lot of tooling to be mandatory.
Load bearing.
Yes.
So making changes.
Yeah.
Port artifacts in image is going to cause other breakages, second order breakages.
Yeah, you can't just delete the config out of the artifact.
Yep.
Out of the image spec.
Out of the image spec, yeah.
Right, and adding a new field like artifact type, change behavior.
You're duplicating the same behavior in two places.
And then they have to change more behavior on theirs.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. So
Is it the bottom line that whatever we do, we break stuff?
We're good at that. We're good at that.
That's what I read from the last 3 hours.
But
whatever we do,
but Toddy,
we break stuff.
no, that's actually a really good summary, Toddy. But the nice thing of and I'm not taking a stance here, but I will say in the context of that, no matter what we're breaking stuff, we don't have to break stuff if we introduce an entirely new media type. Modifying an existing media type that's been in use for 8 years potentially breaks stuff. It doesn't seem like I like a lot of the aspects of what we talked about around not needing like capital A artifacts. This one I'm not really convinced, and Sajay put it into words. Like it's just there, this already exists in the wild. Changing it seems pretty risky.
And to add to that, so Jesse, we break stuff either way, right? Whether we stay with image manifest or whether we introduce artifact animal. What I'm kind of worried is, first, if we stay with the image manifest, it's like more patchwork that we're putting on a patchwork, and we'll end up with this caricature that everything in open source is just one small library that keeps the whole internet working, right? And it will be much easier to enable all the new scenarios that we were discussing, right, with artifact manifest, and make it a more clearer actually migration. I am still with Brendan though, right? What is the guidance that we'll provide to these tools? Because we'll put something. Yeah, go ahead, Brendan.
My plan as a tool writer on the Reg client side, so frenemy competitor kind of stuff, was to say I'm going to default all of my artifacts that I create. Whenever you say create an artifact, if you don't pass some experimental flag or an extra flag in there, to default to the image spec for some amount of time. And I was going to wait until I saw what I thought was a really good progress in the community and enough time for what I thought would take for people to upgrade their registries and other tooling, before I changed the default in a future release. And then in the release notes, I was going to put a big blurb in there saying, this is breaking, here's how you default to the older version if you need to keep defaulting to the older version. I was going to make that as explicit as possible to end users so that they would have that opportunity to hold back on their side if they wanted to. But the whole time, I was going to parse both of them as receiving.
So should we just add, I don't know whether it's part of the spec or something that clients need to document their behavior, because for us, like Oras and Notary, they'll do the opposite. So they'll default to the new one, but we'll have explicit flag for the old one.
Jesse, you're pushing us into overtime, but I'm going to give it to you. Go for it.
I don't have to. It's fine. I'm repeating myself.
Finish the thought. Okay. I think we went around in circles for a whole bunch. We managed to not strangle each other, so yay. And yeah, no meeting tomorrow, so have a party. But till next week, follow up in the PR. Hopefully we made some progress. Not as much as I wanted, but hopefully we made some progress.
Just kind of one question maybe, and I don't want to open it for the next 3 hours. I'll try to be careful. Yeah.
Should we take it into drink?
Let me get ready to get out of the room. But like, what are not? I hear Jesse asking about the release. So what? We put some timeline by when we want to have a decision, or what are the next steps? Yeah, I understand we will follow up on the PR, but
I think we were stuck enough here that we didn't get to the point that we have a timeline.
No, Toddy asked for a date. Josh proposed 1:30. That sounded good to me.
1:30, like 2 days ago?
Yeah, the other day.
If we push for a date right now, my push is going to be pull out the artifact spec from there until we can come up with a consensus amongst ourselves. But I feel like we're really close that I'd like to not do that.
That in the next 2 weeks, we want to make a decision on the artifact spec, and are you okay with that?
As far as I'm concerned, I've exercised as much boardsmanship as I possibly can, and it is up to everybody to ruminate on things said. I am fine with whatever date. Like, I want to get new functionality out there to simplify users' experiences. But whatever we can do.
No matter what we do, it's a change. We need to push a new RC for the change. We need to give the community time to look over that RC before we do a GA, right? Process for doing a release.
Okay, so I will plant a worm for your thoughts then, because we're now 3 over.
Get a new RC out. Yeah, so we need a new RC.
So we're now 3 minutes over. So I'm going to share the original thought I was going to say. I don't actually agree that we break something regardless. So I'm going to leave this thought as we're all thinking about this. I don't agree with that. I agree with a lot of the other observations made through 999. I don't agree that we, by default, as a specification, break people's implementations either way. I think modifying 1.0 behavior definitely breaks people. I think adding new functionality that has not yet existed before that clients have an option to adopt, I don't see how that breaks people. Just going to throw that out there. Thank you all.
Leave you with that last word.
Final word?
Thanks all. See you in Amsterdam.
See you in
Okay.
Amsterdam.
I highly doubt it. Safe travels, everybody.
I love y'all.
Thank you, Amy. You got a big.
Thank you,
heart shape.
Amy. I never saw Amy once.
I saw her walking out of a door once. She's hiding.
I missed it. All right. Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone.
Enjoy. Go have dinner or something on me.